Hello, this video is designed to support you with the new unseen poetry task. From now on, the exam would say that you've got to look at two poems that you've never seen before and compare the ways that they explore or look at a key theme. Now this is a tall order, not least because you're against eye-wateringly tight time limits. Fortunately, this video will enable you to take that beast of a task and really kind of chip it down to size, make it a little bit more manageable. This slide provides an overview of the task, kind of like the house rules for tackling this unseen poetry response. You've got 45 minutes to answer one question, which, as I say, is pretty tight in terms of time. You've got to compare two poems, and you want to be aiming for about 4 to 6 paragraphs. The mark scheme says that the best responses will show a wide range of comparisons. Well, I reckon 6 paragraphs works out at about 3 comparisons, doesn't it? And you're looking at a theme that will be stated in the question. This is not a case of just taking a poem and analysing every single metaphor and simile in it just for poops and giggles. You've got an explicit task to look for poetic techniques that help present this key theme cited in the question. Now, the exam will expect you to look for structural techniques and language techniques. So make sure you're doing that. Of course, these techniques need to be presenting that key theme. Finally, you want to be chucking in the appropriate terminology, which shouldn't be too daunting a task for you. I'm sure already you use words like simile, metaphor, enjambment, engage the reader, sonnet form, blah de blah de blah. And you'll also be writing in a critical style. Now what this means basically is it's a kind of a formal piece of writing with no waffle. You're not going to say things like, that poem was sick, whoa. Now obviously I don't think you would be tragic enough to do something like that, but it highlights my meaning. This is a formal piece of writing geared towards the examiner. Oh, also if you can, try and pepper your work with words like this: effective, engaging, powerful. These are nice words to put in to show how you feel about a poet's use of poetic technique. So for instance, you might say in line 6, the poet uses metaphor effectively. And of course then you'll go on to analyse that metaphor. It's just a clever way of telegraphing to the examiner that you appreciate the poet's craftsmanship in shaping that poem. Now, since you've got very good teachers, you'll know about a fair few of these poetic techniques. But just think of this page as a one-stop shop. I've got outlined below some language techniques and structural techniques that you could be looking out for and analysing in your poetry. Of course, these are not exhaustive lists. You'll be able to think of dozens of other examples. I'll clarify a few of the awkward ones though. Plosives are words that begin with what I call a spitting sound. So sounds like k and b and t and f. You almost have to spray that letter. So plosives are words beginning with those harsh sounds. And that can be a great way to create a bitter atmosphere, an aggressive or tense atmosphere. It can create an aura of menace. Similarly, or by contrast rather, you've got non-plosives. These are softer sentence starting sounds. Letters like l and m and n. And that soft tone can usher in a more gentle atmosphere, maybe a more languid or laid back tone. Then there are oxymorons. These are when you jam two opposites together to create a certain literary effect. You might talk about a bittersweet moment, or if your room is a tip but you know where everything is, you might say, hey, it's just organised chaos. So you're jamming two opposites together to create an effect. In the structural section, we've got a sonnet. Sonnet is a love poem, usually 14 lines long. Caesura. I was a long time at school, folks. Got my GCSEs, my A-levels, my degree. Don't think ever bothered me pretty little head with the idea of a caesura. So don't lose sleep if you don't know what it is, or you have no intention of talking about it. But in general terms, the caesura is a pause in a line of poetry, occasioned normally by a punctuation mark, and it can be used to dramatic or creative effect. You've got the split or isolated lines. You know what I'm talking about here. Sometimes 1 or 2 lines will be separate from the rest of the poem. That'll be done to occasion a certain effect. And similarly, the size of the stanza might have some logic or intention behind it as well. And this is the question we'll be tackling today. Compare the ways the writers present the sea in Patrol Barnegat and the sea. In your answer you should compare the ideas in the poems, the poet's use of language, the poet's use of form and structure. Use evidence from the poems to support your comparison. Now this is framed according to the Edexcel exam spec, but I dare say there's a lot of overlap and similarities with other exam boards. Now on the next slide you're going to see me highlighting the key words of this question to give me a better, clear idea of what exactly it is I'm going to be doing in response to this task. And here we are, presto changeo. I've slapped on some green paint and we can see the key words here. Well, it's a comparative task, so logic dictates we highlight compare. The ways. I guess the ways refers to the poetic techniques, both language and structure, that are employed. The writers are presenting the sea. That is our key word, as it were. The whole focus of this question is how these poems present the sea. We need to be thinking about the ideas that the poems present about the sea. We need to be thinking about those language techniques that are used to that end, and also the formal and structural techniques too. And very helpfully, the reminders at the end, use evidence from the poems to support your comparison. You'll notice the chap from the exam board has put evidence and comparison in bold himself, just I guess to hammer home that message that you need to be putting in quotations to back up your ideas, and that the main thrust of this task is to compare two poems. And voila, here are these two poems cited in the question: The Sea by James Reeves and Patrol Barnegat by Walt Whitman. I won't bother reading them out. You can pause these videos if you so wish and drink in the silky skills of these A-list wordsmiths. Now these are just extracts from the poem. They're the first sections of each of the poem, but it's more than enough for Mr. Taylor to work his magic on, as you will see over the next few slides. So, with minimal fuss and muss, I've managed to winkle out a couple of poetic techniques in this poem in response to the main task: compare the ways the writers present the sea. There's a metaphor here to present the sea in the storm. It talks about the demoniac laughter. Well, last time I checked, the sea doesn't have a mouth, it's not evil. Clearly this is metaphorical imagery. The poet's trying to do something here. Also, we've got this ing ending to every line, muttering, peeling, lashing, careering. I'm sure I'll be able to forge a link between this structural feature and the way the poet is trying to present the sea. And finally, I've got on that last line there some rhetorical questions. Is that a wreck? Is the red signal flaring? Okay, so I've ticked a box. I identified 3 techniques here. And of course, I'm a very happy camper because one of those is a structural technique, this repetition of the ing word at the end of each line. Now let's go on to thinking about the effects of these techniques, and specifically how these techniques help to present that key theme, the sea. We've got the metaphor, the demoniac laughter, to present the waves in the storm. I think this is suggesting that there's an element of danger and perhaps almost evil to the water. It's got a very powerful, aggressive, malevolent approach to anything caught in it in the middle of a storm. The repetitive endings, ing, 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 careering, slanting, breasting. Can I forge a link to the sea here? Yes, I think I probably can. I can say the regularity, the repetition of the ending echoes the repetitive rhythm of waves crashing on the shore. You might think that sounds a little bit Mickey Mouse. Hey, I've taken a technique and I've linked it, albeit awkwardly, to the key theme. So I'm a happy camper. And finally, let's look at these rhetorical questions. Now, I'm not going to go for that default, the writer uses rhetorical questions, this is to make us think. I think it's been used a little bit more subtly here, and we can respond accordingly. Is that a wreck? Is the red signal flaring? It's significant there's 2 rhetorical questions here, and they're 2 short, sharp questions too. I think this is generating a note of anxiety, as if it captures the idea that the water is quite dangerous and ushers in perhaps a sense of fear and confusion. Lots of questions, lots of confusion, lots of questions, perhaps a note of panic as well. I've done a similar thing with James Reeves' poem here. I've I've spotted a metaphor in line 1. The sea is a hungry dog. Well, we know the sea is not a dog, doesn't have a wet nose, it doesn't go around sniffing other seas' bottoms. Clearly, metaphor being used to create effect here. We've also got some enjambment, with one line running onto the other, unimpeded or slowed down by punctuation mark. Clashing teeth and shaggy jaws, harp on airy nose. And finally, we've got this repetition of bones, 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 bones. Again, when I'm analysing these, I need to be linking them to the sea, the focal point of the task. The sea is a hungry dog. I think this is suggesting there's something a little bit dangerous about the sea. Hungry, almost like it consumes or swallows things or people that are in it. And dog perhaps having connotations of savagery and wildness. It's kind of something, the sea is something unruly here. Perhaps that's backed up with clashing teeth and shaggy jaws, arrow upon airy nose. You've got this image of the teeth and the jaws, backing up the idea of a dog, but the fact that it's enjambment in a general sense, creates pace. Why have we got pace here? I would say it's kind of capturing the swift, fluent motion of the ocean here. Yes, that sounds a bit awkward, but again, I'm linking a technique to the key theme, so job done in many ways. And bones, 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 bones. I think this repetition is almost supposed to be onomatopoeic. It's supposed to capture the sound of the sea and perhaps reinforce the idea that it's always hungering for its next meal, which presents in quite a dangerous light. And here we have, on the back end of those rough analytical notes, a model paragraph in response to the question. In Reeves's poem, the sea is presented through metaphor. He calls the sea a hungry dog, giant and grey. The word hungry implies the sea poses a danger to people. It can devour or swallow them up. Moreover, the word dog has connotations of wild animals. This further suggests the savage nature of the sea. I'll explain very briefly some of the spiffy things I've done here to galvanise this paragraph and push it towards the highest grades. Well, first of all, I'm responding to the question, aren't I? The question was about the sea and how the poets use techniques to present the sea. I've got presented and sea in there, and I've got the word metaphor in there too. The question asked the ways the poets present the sea. Well, hey, metaphor is one of those ways, so nobody can accuse me of going off the plot. He calls the sea a hungry dog. I've embedded my quotation there. I've not just said a hungry dog, I've said he calls the sea a hungry dog. This is a little bit more of a fluent way of presenting your evidence. The examiner appreciates it. I've locked in on language here. I've locked in on that word hungry. Examiner loves that too. Implies, launches my explanation. The sea poses a danger to people. I've got a connective moreover in there, signposting loud and clear to the examiner that I'm going deeper. I'm not done here. Moreover, comma, the word dog. So I'm locking in on language again. I'm talking about the connotations of the word dog this time. I'm saying it as a connotation of wild animals. And I've explained what that suggests about the sea. So this would be a very high level response, given that I've not just analysed a word, I've gone deeper and looked at another word in that evidence as well and linked it all to the key theme. And here's the comparative paragraph. I'll read it out. I won't do too much explanation on this. If you wish, by all means, think about why I've put certain bits in bold. I'm marshalling your attention to tricks to secure the highest grades. What are those tricks? Similarly, Whitman employs metaphor to present the sea. He speaks of the waves and the storm as shouts of demoniac laughter, fitfully piercing. The word demoniac means evil. This emphasises the danger and power held by the sea. Moreover, piercing has connotations of knives. This conveys a sense of the pain that crashing waves can inflict. The only feature I will draw your attention to here is that first connective, similarly. That is launching my comparative paragraph, and that is telling the examiner that I am comparing these poems. In this case, I've asserted a similarity between Whitman's poem and Reeves's poem. Of course, if I was asserting a difference, I would use another connective, perhaps something like however or in contrast. So that initial connective, pivotal to kicking off the comparative paragraph. In these paragraphs, I'm going to be asserting a second comparison. I'm going to be comparing the repetition in Whitman's poem, every line ending in an ing word, with the enjambment in Reeves's. And of course, the examiner is heaving a huge sigh of relief here because he's not a bad man, not in his heart of hearts, and he's just glad that you're looking at some structural techniques as well as the language ones, because that is ensuring you can access the highest levels, the highest grades. And here are those two high quality paragraphs exploring that comparison, that link. By all means, pause the video, read them at your leisure. Again, I've put certain features in bold to marshal your attention to the tricks I'm employing to secure the highest grades. One little point I will direct your attention to, in the second paragraph where I'm talking about enjambment, I put a slash in the evidence. It says clashing teeth and shaggy jaws / hour he gnaws. This is simply because I'm talking about enjambment and perhaps logic dictates that I should show where that line break is going. I can't imagine, however, that it's an absolute showstopper if you forget to put it in. Oh, sweet mercy, Mr. Taylor's almost done banging on with himself. His poetic pontifications are almost at an end. Conclusions. You're comparing two poems in 45 minutes. Focus on how the two poems present a key theme, and that key theme, of course, will be mentioned in the exam task. You're aiming for 2 to 3 comparisons. That roughly works out about 4 to 6 paragraphs. Please use connectives to help launch those comparisons, write in the appropriate critical style, and employ appropriate terminology. Finally, make sure that you're identifying and analysing poetic techniques that the poets are employing to present that key theme. And of course, these must be structural techniques and language techniques if you want to hit those highest grades. And that's how you tackle 2 unseen poems and forge comparisons between them. Now go forth and do the business in the exam hall.